Growing up in the United States, you have a dream. My dream was to have 5 acres of land with a home on it, another home for my boys, cars that were paid off, being able to retire, having my own business. These are all a part of the American dream. And then I moved to Spain and realized that my dream changed. And we're going to look at another American today who had a dream and seeing what their perspective is now that he's been out of the country for like 10 years. This is Europe Ruined the American Dream for Me by Joe Bauer. Link will be down below so you can head on over and support his channel. That would be great. This is going to be a lot of fun. Give the video a quick like and let's see what we can see.
The key to happiness is buying your own spacious house in the suburbs, a 2-car garage, a white picket fence, and perhaps most importantly, cash. Glorious, glorious wads of cash.
Yeah.
I'm rich! I'm wealthy!
Wait. He said most importantly, I guess. But yeah, that's what it was. Always had a dream of becoming wealthy. You never have to worry about anything.
Cash. Glorious, glorious wads of cash.
I'm rich! I'm wealthy! Yahoo! I'm comfortably well off! Woohoo!
The Europeans, on the other hand, are miserable, cycling everywhere throughout their bleak existence because they can't afford a car, crammed on top of each other. GDP, disposable income, socialism.
That's a scary word over there in the U.S.
Socialism. 10 years ago, I moved to Germany with no idea of what to expect. Except, of course, I get to ride on trains. But I didn't just learn about what it's like to live in Germany or travel across Europe. I learned a lot about my home country in the process. And 10 years of living in Europe has completely changed what I think about the United States and what makes us happy. And in this video, I'll tell you all about it. But in case you are new here, my name is Joe Bauer. I immigrated to Germany 10 years ago and have been traveling around the world even longer, trying to close the gap between the story we're told about a place and the reality on the ground. And in this case, I feel like I've been lied to about the United States my entire life.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I would agree. I'm curious to know what he says. Space equals happiness.
My wife and
Yes, that's true. Okay, hold on. Let me listen to what he has to say.
I moved to Berlin in late 2019 after 3 years of living in Dusseldorf. There were merely whispers at the time of this weird virus coming out of China named after a Mexican beer. The first apartment we looked at was admittedly smaller than we would have liked. It was about 50 square meters or 540 square feet. That's horrifyingly small by typical American standards, where the average home is roughly 2,300 square feet or 214 square meters.
We had a home. We bought a home. It was 2,500 square feet. And we didn't have it very long, maybe about 2 years. But yeah, it was a nice big 2-story house, had a decent sized backyard, big front yard. It was a nice house.
That's more than twice the size of the average German home. But the neighborhood is incredible. Super walkable, beautiful architecture, green spaces, and easy access to public transit. We decided in the end, who cares if it's a small apartment with no balcony? There's so much to do right outside of the apartment. We're hardly going to be spending any time inside. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and we basically weren't allowed to do anything except run around the block and bake sourdough. Or I suppose in my case, bake challah. I'll fully admit that at the time, we would have loved to have a bigger apartment because we couldn't go to the movie theater, the bars, the restaurants, the cafes, none of it. We were stuck at home, but of course once things opened up, I started to feel a lot less trapped in my apartment. I finally got to experience Berlin in the normal times, and it was honestly everything I expected it to be, and more. And now I'm the biggest cheerleader for our neighborhood, and I couldn't imagine giving it up, even if, yes, I wouldn't mind having an extra bedroom. My fear of losing our apartment and our place in the neighborhood
This said not my actual apartment, you creeps.
Mind having an extra bedroom.
So he said
my fear of losing our apartment and our place in the neighborhood far outweighs my desire for a larger apartment, which we could more easily find and more easily afford if we were willing to live further outside of the city or the neighborhood. But in the US, space is king.
Space is king. And I don't know, it's almost like a status image thing. You know, if you had this big 5,000 square foot home that had a wine cellar in the basement and, you know, had a movie room and this and that and all these things, and, you know, then you're doing it. You're surviving. You're thriving, I should say. Or, you know, that's kind of what the thought or idea is over there in the US. But size, space is everything. Big kitchen, big bedrooms, big this, that, everything else. I would say coming to Spain kind of changed my view of that. Coming to Europe. Because it's just like, yeah, you just don't need all that space. You can only be in one place at a time.
Over the last 110 years, the average size of an American home has increased by 250%, even as
wow.
household sizes declined by 44%. In other words, the homes are getting bigger to hold fewer people. I was doing some travel in the US, and I recently heard this theory that tries to explain why Americans might prefer bigger homes. I forget where I first heard it, so I apologize that I can't properly credit it, but hey, if you're watching this and it was you, leave a comment and take that credit. So here it goes. We all already know about American sprawl. I talked about it in my last video and about how the average American basically has to drive to reach anything. In other words, the bars, the restaurants, the cafes, the movie theater, none of it is within walking distance. You gotta drive. And as much as we try to tell ourselves, oh, I don't mind driving, I think a lot of us are starting to catch on as to how much it really sucks. If I want to go to dinner in Berlin,
I mean, that's true. I do like driving. That's just a fact. But I haven't driven in 4 years, roughly, and I'm fine with that. So
a lot of us are starting to catch on as to how much it really sucks. If I want to go to dinner in Berlin, I just step outside of my apartment and enjoy a pretty scenic walk to get wherever I'm going. But in suburban America, it's a boring, oftentimes monotonous and ugly drive. And if you're going anywhere interesting, you're probably going to have to deal with traffic and then search for and pay for parking. The 10 to 20 minutes I'm spending trying to get somewhere is light years more enjoyable than the suburbanite trying to go out and do whatever they're doing. So instead of downsizing and getting a smaller place, you decide to get a bigger house and you just bring the city to you. You might build a large dining room that kind of acts like...
That's a good way of putting it. I never thought of that. You get a bigger house and put everything in there so you don't have to go out much? Is that what he's saying? I think so.
Your restaurant, a sitting room for your cafe. Or hey, if you're a cliche from a 90s sitcom, you'll build a man cave complete with a sports bar and movie theater.
That's right. That's what we do over there. Actually, I don't know. Is that something that happens in Europe where you get man caves and all this? I mean, that's like definitely a thing in the U.S. If you could just have a man cave, which is you have a TV, maybe a little small mini fridge that you keep beers in, and you have your favorite team's jersey on the wall, and it's just like everything that a man likes is in that room, and women are not allowed. I never really had a man cave, but I had friends that did, and I've been in those, so that's kind of how I know what they are.
You got to make sure you got a backyard because you don't have any other green space to walk to. The park is a drive away. This is partially why being stuck at my apartment during COVID was all the more miserable. I was living a suburban American experience in a tiny European apartment with none of the amenities that come with it. Because I don't have enough space in my Berlin apartment to bring the city inside. But I probably could afford that lifestyle for the same amount of money if I decided to up and move to suburban America. But I know that having that kind of space wouldn't make me inherently happy. And I suspect deep down, it doesn't really make that many Americans happy, what with the growing loneliness epidemic. I suspected all of this early on in my adult life when I moved to Chicago out of college, and even into the actual city of Cleveland afterwards. But living in Berlin has made it crystal clear. Americans aren't buying big houses because space itself makes them happy. They're buying big houses because their cities were designed so spread out, they're desperately trying to bring the lifeblood of the city into their otherwise empty homes.
I don't know. I might kind of add to that. I don't think that's it. I think that you get a nice big house because it's like like accomplishment. And another thing in the US is that you're always told that, if you don't have anything else, you just want to have a house because you always have somewhere to go. So, like I know my mother has a house and that's her thing. Like no matter what, she's not ever going to give up that house because she always wants a place to go. So I think that's a part of it too. But I do think a big part of it is status. Like, if you just live in an apartment or it's like you haven't arrived unless you own a home. That's how it is over there. And it's way different here in Spain. I mean, there's people who live in these apartments that we're in this complex, and it's not a home. It's not a home with a yard and a garage and all of that. And they probably live here 30, 40, 50 years and they're just fine with it. So I don't mind it now. That part of my dream has changed for sure. Whoa, 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 whoa. Money doesn't always talk. That's an interesting statement.
I hear from the occasional American apologist in my comments who tries to defend how the US rolls. The GDP is higher in the poorest US states than in many prosperous European countries, they'll say. Or a more recent one bragged that disposable income is much higher in the United States than compared with Europe. Look, I've never been a money guy. I honestly probably should know more about finances. But stocks, bonds, it all bores me to absolute tears, and I don't ever want to measure my life by just how much I benefited the shareholders. Yeah. That said, yes, it's true, the GDP in most US states is higher than in most European countries. And honestly, I don't care.
Yeah, what the hell does that have to do with anything? I mean, just because I lived in a state with high GDP didn't mean that I got like some kind of profit share or something, and every month they put an extra $3,000 or $4,000 into my account. Like, that didn't happen. And all these states who supposedly have high GDP have some of the lowest educational standards. They have a lot of poor people. I mean, so it doesn't equate to having a quality life, I think.
What I do know is that I've never woken up in the US one morning, or anywhere else for that matter, and thought to myself, oh boy, sure feel great about the GDP here.
Exactly.
Yes, we pay higher taxes in Europe, but those taxes pay for things I can tangibly experience and benefit from.
Hey, you can say that again, because I'm paying the hell out of some taxes here in Spain. I can tell you that. But, but I don't know. I understand. And, there are benefits that I gain from it, but, hey, that's just the way it is. I'm paying a lot of taxes.
Europe. But those taxes pay for things I can tangibly experience and benefit from.
Right.
I'd rather have fast and reliable public transportation than more disposable income that I'm forced to spend on a car anyways, because trains are basically as rare as a mountain lion sighting. Look, as long as I've got enough disposable income to get the new Zelda game once every few years, I'm good. Besides, disposable income only goes so far in the US when you probably have to hang on to that cash in case, God forbid, you get sick one day.
Right.
Millions of Americans...
Exactly. That's true. You don't have a safety net over there. Not at all. Not at all.
When you probably have to hang on to that cash in case, God forbid, you get sick one day. Millions of Americans turn to crowdfunding to help cover medical costs for themselves or loved ones.
Yep.
Overall, about 33% of all campaigns on GoFundMe are dedicated to medical bills. And that's...
Yeah, that's true. I just had to pause it because I have friends that if they get sick, if they get diagnosed with some illness, that's what they do. Like, I had a friend who, like, her house was burned, and she was asking for help, and I had friends that get some type of illness and they can't work anymore, so, and they got to pay for the medical bills and all that. So, yeah, they started GoFundMe or something like that. I hadn't really thought of that. I just forgot.
That's on top of the fact that medical debt remains the leading cause of personal bankruptcy in the United States. So like literally anything else in the world, there's give and take. Some people really do love paying the lowest amount of taxes as humanly possible and measure their happiness by the size of their bank account, even if the rest of the world is crumbling all around them. But that ain't me, and I suspect it's not a growing number of Americans.
I don't know about that. I think it's a large number of Americans think that way. I don't think that way. I'm more like him. So I totally get it, I think that if I just, as long as I was taken care of and everybody else was I don't care what was happening around me, the whole world was crumbling but I'm doing great. I don't know. That's not my way of thinking. I like to help people if I can. So I think that's what he's saying.
Crumbling all around them. But that ain't me, and I suspect it's not a growing number of Americans. Growing up
Right.
in the US, I thought the key to happiness was a big ass house in the burbs,
Yep.
easy highway access, and lots of money to fill that house with lots of stuff. But
Yep.
now I see that happiness isn't about what you can buy, it's about what surrounds you. And I'd much rather be surrounded by streets with an honest to God pulse than hollowed out cities and carbon copy suburbs with about as much personality as a thumbtack.
That's a great point. That's a great point. It's about what surrounds you. I did learn that about coming here to Spain. Like all, just the people and going to coffee shops or cafes and seeing how they don't have cell phones, or their cell phones are not out, their laptops, things like that. Like they're there just to talk and enjoy life, and it's just about what's around them, whose company they have. So I thought that was great.
Alright, sports fans, I'm filming this video in Athens at the tail end of a month and a half of travel that started with a train ride from Berlin through to Italy, exploring national parks out in the western United States, with a car-free pit stop in my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. I'm in Greece to run along the Menelon Trail for a story I'm working on for Men's Journal, tied to the upcoming release of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. I don't usually do travel videos on this channel, well, at least not anymore, but let me know in the comments if it's something you'd like to see. In the meantime, I'm just happy to be back in Europe. And if you watch this video, you might understand why I generally feel physically better when I'm out here running around Europe than when I'm back in the United States.
Well, that was a good video there, Joe. So I definitely think that my idea, I guess it's not an American dream anymore, because it's now my new European dream. But I still want to have, a home, and I still, want to have something for my family to have. So, but a car, that's not really in my American dream. Living in some big fancy city or something, that's not necessarily in my dream. But yeah, so I thought that was an interesting video. Let me know what you thought. Go ahead and drop that in the comments. That would be great. If you liked the video, then subscribe to the channel, man. It's easy and it's free. My name is Greg. I'll catch you on the next video. Peace.